All right, so this is going to be the demo for the fourth drawing. And you can see what I've got here is I've got my black 9x12 paper. You're going to need your blending stick, probably the sandpaper to clean it off. And then you just need your white charcoal pencil. But if you're at school, I've got a couple of other things that you could use. You could use white color pencil for the initial sketch. And then I also have white charcoal sticks, and they're all on the main table back there with the other tools. So those of you at school have a couple other options. If you're at home, I mean, color pencils are pretty common. You probably have white color pencil at home if you want to try this, but the whole thing can be done with just the charcoal pencil if that's what you've got, okay? So what I'm going to do is you want to do the same thing we did on the last drawing where here's my photo reference I'm working from. So remember, the idea is you want to think of this frame of the photo as like the size of your paper. And if you're working in person and you have the viewfinder, I've got, remember these little viewfinders here. You imagine the frame of the viewfinder is like the frame of your picture. So just to recap it really quick, if I'm drawing this pencil sharpener and I hold this up, and I try to get that pencil sharpener within there, let's say I'm drawing this right here, then I pretend that hole I'm looking through is the size of my paper, and so then I reference where the sharpener is to the edge of the paper to try to plot those points and get it drawn in. So that's that whole idea there. Now, if you're in person and you don't want to use the viewfinders, you could set up the still life, then take a picture on your phone, and then you'd still be looking at a photo, and then that photo edge becomes the viewfinder, okay? So I'm just going to kind of reference this again. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a light sketch with either white charcoal or color pencil. And you guys are going to want to draw light because remember, we don't want like the really dark outlines on this. We want the values to determine the edge. Now, in my example, I'm going to draw dark on purpose because you won't be able to see it if I draw as light as I would want you to draw. Okay. So looking at this, I'm going to look at, okay, here's the edge of my cube. And I'm going to look at how far away it is from the edge here. So I'm going to say it's roughly, I don't know, probably this far away from the edge. And then location-wise, if I imagine this is the halfway line of my paper, it's just above halfway. So I'm going to guess probably like somewhere in here. So I'm going to kind of mark that spot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to more quickly draw from here. But I'm going to try to get the right angle. And I'm just going to be loose and sketchy. Once again, my lines are going to be really dark. You don't want to do this. I'm just doing it so you guys can see. And then I'm just going to kind of build that cube out. I'm going to look at the angles here and try to mimic the angles I'm seeing. And I'm going to try to mimic the size. So you would be taking your time to really like plot the points and figure out where everything goes to try to get this as accurate as possible. But I'll go ahead and just get this started here. Okay, we'll go from here. And then down right here. And then I remember that my sphere is about right here. It kind of starts here and then kind of comes here. So I'm just going to do my circular motion and try to get that sphere in. Okay, so something like this. Okay, and then my cube is going to come back like this. Okay, so you can see I'm really trying to mimic that overlap there that I'm seeing in the photo here. And then now, once again, that I have the sphere on there, I can kind of pinpoint. So here's what I'm looking at. I'm not just looking at like, where does the cone touch the sphere, but I'm also looking at how big of a gap is there between the cube and the cone. And I'm trying to mimic that. And I feel like this is probably an appropriate amount of gap here. This to me looks like about the right spot. So I'm going to mark that point there. And then what I can do is when I'm looking at the height of my cone, I'm not only looking at how far away is it from the top of my paper, I'm also looking how far above the cube should it go. And I'm trying to kind of get that point there. So to me, I would say somewhere like in this range looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to come down here and try to find where it kind of connects up with the sphere this way. And then we'll get that kind of drawn on that way. Okay. So there's my base thing. So imagine this as just like very light, like light enough that you can barely see it, just because you don't want to end up with these like solid lines at the end. You just want to kind of have it mapped out where it's going to go. You create your edges through your values. Now here's the part where you have to be tricky, right? So this is, oh wow, that's really bright. I see it's overcompensating because I got black paper, but I've got another drawing here, but you can see the top of my cube is white. And then I've got the shading here. So here's the thing that you have to aim for. You need the values on your pencil drawing to be the same values as on your black drawing, your black paper drawing. So what you have to do is you have to work in reverse. We are so used to that with our pencil or our tool that we're making the shadows, we're making the darker areas. But here you already have the darkest value, so we actually have to make the highlights. So with my white charcoal, I'm going to start with the easy part. The top of this here is pure white, right? So I take my charcoal and I fill that in pure white because that's the lightest part. Okay. The common mistake is somebody would be coloring in the darker areas with the white, but that's not what you want to do because that's the darker area, okay? The way to think of charcoal, you want to think of it as like basically like a crazy soft pencil. It's like really, really soft, and it's going to smear and blend really easily. Charcoal does get a little bit messy. It's going to get on your hands. If you're at school, remember I do have aprons that you can use if you want to use an apron. Charcoal is probably one of the messier things that we do in this class. Okay. So this is nice here because it's very easy to just fill that in white and create that edge. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use your blending stick. Now you need to make sure that it's not dirty. If it still has like pencil lead on there from the last time, you don't want that mixing in. So my side, I've cleaned on the sandpaper already, so I know that that's good to go. And so I'm just going to go and smooth this out. And so for this white charcoal one, I do want you to try to do it blended. You know, on the other pencil drawing, you could kind of choose what shading style you liked from the 6. But on this one, I do want it to be blended. And I want you to work on getting that in there. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. I'm just going to blow on this to get some of those extra things off there. All right, so now I've got the top on there. That's pretty solid, right? Now I've got to kind of get these edges here. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Your charcoal pencils, you can just sharpen like a normal pencil. So if you have a hand sharpener, that usually works best. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have this side be my darkest side. Now I could decide that that's going to be just the paper color, but then this side I might have dark, but with just a little bit. So what you want to do is just, if it's a darker area, but it's not pure black, you just want to do a very, very light value. Okay. So I'm just going to go in here and do a very, very light value. Okay. I'm just coloring very lightly. Okay, and then I'm going to take my blending stick. Now here's the thing. It's going to be hard to see, but my blending stick still has some like bright white from up here. And if I were to like go up into the corner here, you can see that that white came off, and I might not want it to be that light. So you do have to clean the white off on your sandpaper as well. So be aware that even though it's white, you still need to clean it off. Okay, so now I'm going to go up here, and now you can see I'm getting a more consistent value as to what I want. And I'm going to try to go right over the edges here. And I'm going to try to get a similar value to what I want. Okay, so I'm going to fill that in like that. Okay, now what you're going to notice is, so this value, it's a little bit lighter, but it still has some darkness to it. But you notice here, I've got this part here where I've got this cast shadow that's darker, right? So you'd think, well, how do I make that darker? Normally you would draw and add more, but I'm using white right now. So, and I want you guys to try to avoid like taking a dark tool and trying to go in and darken it with like charcoal or something. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an eraser. So if I use an eraser, I can actually go and I can pull this cast shadow out just by erasing some of that in there. So now if I go like this and I pull that out, you can see that I've created that cast shadow just with my eraser right there. So you have to just be creative about how you do that. But this should look accurate to the picture. It shouldn't be like a reverse where like the lighter areas are dark and the darker areas are light. So it's that whole idea. Now, on my original drawing, and I know it's going to be hard to see because the white balance is really off on my, yeah, you can't even see it at all. Yeah, the white balance is too far off. But you can kind of see here on the side. Remember on the top of the cube on the other one, we had to darken the background to show the top that was white. So you have to do the opposite here. So see how this side, if we're going to leave that pure black, we don't want to just like have this weird white outline here. We want to have some shading in the background to help define that. So what I might do is I might take this and I could decide, and here's the other thing, right? Like we've still got like a cast shadow coming out of here as well. So what I might do is this, is I might just kind of take this area and I might just do like a medium value. And once again, it doesn't have to like cover up the whole thing. You can just kind of like let it fizzle or fade out at some point. Okay, so I might just have something like this that kind of fizzles and fades out. But then I can take my blending stick and we can go right up against the edge here. And now we're going to define the edge with the value, not with the outline. Okay, and I can just pull that out and let that fade out. And we can just try to let that fade into the natural darker areas there. And I could continue this value like over here. I'm just not going to go too crazy, right? And then what I've got is I've got a cast shadow coming out of here. So now I might take my eraser and I might just pull that out and create that cast shadow this way with my eraser a little bit. And I can just try to kind of smooth and blend that in that way. So now I've got my little cast shadow coming out. I've created a little bit of a background there to define that dark edge. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'm not going to sit and do everything, but I did, the cube I'd say fairly well, fairly complete. So you just want to finish out the whole drawing and make it look well, and you're just working in reverse with your charcoal, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Hopefully that made sense to everybody. Let me just...